The morning Lady Selene remembered her own disappearance. Everyone else was celebrating her promotion. If someone had asked me then whether destiny could make a mistake, I would have smiled politely and offered them tea. Now, I knew destiny wasn't the problem. Someone else was. The bells of Willowmere Academy chimed softly across the floating gardens, their crystal notes drifting through lavender skies like feathers carried by the wind. Everything looked exactly as I remembered. The pastel bridges, the climbing roses, the students laughing as they hurried toward class with books tucked beneath their arms. The tiny paper lanterns, dancing in the morning breeze. Every beautiful detail belonged to a day that should never have existed again. I stopped walking. The ribbon around my notebook slipped from my paw and fluttered onto the stone path. No one noticed. No one except me. Because I wasn't staring at the notebook. I was staring at my own paws. They weren't covered in soot anymore. There were no burns. No trembling. No scars. The silver ring Mother had given me before my first semester rested perfectly on my finger. It had melted during the fire. Yet here it was. Untouched. Impossible. Lady Selene. The voice gently pulled me from my thoughts. I looked up. Professor Alder stood beside the academy gates with the same warm smile that had made every frightened first-year feel welcome. His cream-colored cardigan fluttered in the breeze. Round spectacles rested perfectly on his nose. He tilted his head. You've been staring at the pavement for nearly a minute. Words refused to come. Because I remembered watching him cry. Not here. At my memorial. His speech had sounded sincere. Everyone believed him. Including me. Until it was too late. You must be nervous, he chuckled kindly. Today's an important day. Important. Yes. Today. The day I would become assistant archivist for the Royal History Collection. The same position that eventually placed me inside the oldest library vault in the kingdom. The same position that led to accusations. To betrayal. To flames. To silence. I swallowed carefully. I'm all right. You don't look all right. I'm just thinking. He smiled. A dangerous hobby before breakfast. Several students laughed as they walked past us. Everything sounded painfully normal. The fountain splashed. Birds sang. Someone complained about homework. Someone else chased a floating pastry that had escaped the bakery. Life continued exactly as it had before. Except this time. I remembered all of it. The great library stood at the center of Willowmere Academy like a palace built entirely from stories. Ivory towers climbed toward clouds painted in soft peach and mint. Stained glass windows shimmered with pastel blues and pinks. Golden vines curled around marble columns. Thousands of enchanted books floated lazily through the air before returning politely to their shelves. Students always whispered here. Not because they had to. Because the building somehow convinced everyone it deserved respect. I had loved this place. Once. Now every beautiful hallway reminded me of the last time I'd walked through them. The last time. When guards surrounded me. When every student stared. When no one believed my innocence. I forced myself to breathe. Not today. Not again. Lady Selene. A familiar voice echoed through the hall. I turned. A cream and orange tabby hurried toward me, nearly dropping 3 scrolls in the process. Mina. She smiled, so brightly it almost hurt to look at her. Mina had always smiled like the world had never disappointed her. She adjusted the little blue, bow tied around one ear. I've been looking everywhere. You have. Of course. She leaned closer. You forgot today's ceremony. Ceremony. Right. The appointment. Everyone would applaud. Everyone would congratulate me. Everyone would unknowingly celebrate the beginning of the worst month of my life. No. You remembered? I remembered. Mina sighed dramatically. Oh good. I was worried you'd gotten distracted by another mystery. I probably have. She laughed. There she is. What? The real Selene. She bumped my shoulder playfully. You always look serious whenever you've figured something out. If only she knew. I hadn't figured something out. I remembered everything. The ceremony lasted less than 20 minutes. The chancellor congratulated outstanding students. Parents applauded. Teachers smiled proudly. Pastel banners drifted overhead, carried by gentle magic. Finally, Lady Selene Ashbourne. The applause echoed through the courtyard. I walked toward the stage. Exactly 14 steps. I remembered every single one. Because the last time, someone had taken my photograph here. That same photograph later appeared in newspapers beside words like traitor, thief, deceiver. I climbed the steps anyway. The chancellor handed me a polished silver key. The Royal Archive welcomes its newest assistant. Everyone clapped. Someone whistled. Mina practically bounced with excitement. Professor Alder smiled warmly. And standing near the back, almost hidden among faculty, was head archivist Cedric Rowan. Tall, elegant, perfect posture, soft voice, beloved by every student. The cat who later stood before the Royal Council with tears in his eyes, explaining how heartbroken he was that I had betrayed everyone's trust. He noticed me looking, then smiled. Exactly the same smile. Cold rushed through my chest, because I suddenly remembered something I hadn't before. His smile. It never reached his eyes. After the ceremony, students filled the gardens with laughter. Mina hurried ahead. I'll save us pastries. I'll be right there. She disappeared toward the cafe. I remained beside the marble fountain, watching, listening, remembering. Then, a tiny reflection caught my eye. Something shimmered beneath one of the fountain benches. I frowned. That hadn't been there before. Or had it? Slowly I knelt, reaching underneath. My paw touched cool metal. A small brass bell, no larger than an apple, beautifully engraved with tiny lilies. The instant I lifted it, my heart stopped, because tied around the handle was a faded lavender ribbon. My ribbon, the one I tied around a library key. The night before I died, I stared at it. Impossible. No one else could have tied that knot. I knew every loop, every twist, every tiny imperfection. Someone behind me spoke. Interesting little thing, isn't it? I spun around. Cedric Rowan stood only a few feet away, still smiling. His amber eyes rested on the tiny bell in my paw. I've never seen that before, he said gently. But perhaps you should hand it to the archives. I looked at the bell, then back at him. My memory screamed. Don't. Not yet. Not this time. I closed my paw around the bell. I said quietly, I'll keep it safe until I know who lost it. For the first time, his smile hesitated, only for a heartbeat. But it was enough. Enough to tell me one terrifying truth. This wasn't just a second chance. Someone else already knew the game had begun. Selene waited until Cedric disappeared around the corner before allowing herself to breathe again. The tiny brass bell felt unusually heavy in her paw. Not physically, emotionally. She remembered holding it before. She simply couldn't remember when. Memory was strange. Some moments arrived as clear as crystal. Others hid behind fog, refusing to reveal themselves until the right piece fell into place. This bell, it was one of those pieces. Instead of meeting Mina at the cafe, Selene quietly slipped into one of the academy's oldest corridors. Almost no students used it anymore. The walls were painted soft cream with pastel vines climbing between portraits of former scholars. Sunlight poured through tall, stained-glass windows, filling the hallway with patches of pink, lavender, and pale turquoise. It had always been Selene's favorite place to think. She gently turned the bell over. Tiny lilies surrounded its surface. Delicate silver stars circled the handle. Then she noticed something she had missed. There were letters engraved beneath the ribbon. Not words. Initials. S.A. Her own. Selene Ashbourne. Her heartbeat skipped. No, she whispered. How? The bell belonged to her. She knew that much now. But she had never owned a bell. Had she? She closed her eyes. A memory flickered. Darkness. Running footsteps. Someone shouting. The ringing of a bell. Then, nothing. The memory vanished. She opened her eyes again. I need answers. The Royal Archive occupied the highest tower in Willowmere Academy. Unlike the cheerful classrooms below, the archive felt timeless. Ancient shelves stretched upward farther than seemed possible. Floating ladders drifted silently through the air. Books rearranged themselves whenever nobody was looking. Dust sparkled like tiny stars beneath pastel skylights. Everything smelled faintly of parchment, lavender tea, and cedarwood. Selene knew every corner. Or rather, she would. This was technically her first official day. Yet her paws carried her through the maze without hesitation. Left, right, up the spiral staircase, past the globe room, across the bridge connecting two towers, exactly as she remembered. Except, something was different. A portrait. It hung beside the eastern staircase. In her previous life, the portrait showed the Academy's founder. Now, it showed an unfamiliar silver cat holding an old compass. Selene frowned. I don't remember you. The portrait smiled. I should hope not. Selene nearly jumped. Oh, the painted cat chuckled. You youngsters always forget the portraits are enchanted. I wasn't expecting you to answer. Few ever do. His painted tail flicked lazily. You seem troubled. Should she ask? No. Too strange. Instead she smiled politely. I'm looking for records about Academy artifacts. The portrait raised one eyebrow. Already? My curiosity works quickly. So I've heard. He leaned forward inside the frame. If you're looking for unusual objects. His voice became quieter. Avoid shelf 7. Selene blinked. Why? The portrait simply smiled. You'll find out. Then he returned to pretending to be an ordinary painting. Shelf 7. She remembered it. No. She remembered avoiding it. But why? Her paws carried her there anyway. Rows upon rows of ancient books filled the aisle. Every volume wore pastel bindings of pale blue, dusty rose, or soft sage green. Halfway down, she stopped. One shelf stood completely empty, except for a faint square of dust where a book once rested. She frowned. Someone had removed it recently. A tiny silver plaque remained beneath the empty space. Founding Relics, Volume 3. Missing. Someone had signed it out. Yesterday. Selene read the borrowing slip. Her stomach tightened. Authorized by Head Archivist Cedric Rowan. So, a cheerful voice interrupted. You skipped pastries. Selene turned. Mina stood holding 2 strawberry cream buns. I brought yours anyway. Selene smiled despite herself. You always know where to find me. You disappear into libraries. Mina shrugged. It isn't difficult. She handed Selene the pastry, then noticed the empty shelf. What happened here? I don't know. Mina peered closer. Huh. What? My aunt worked here years ago. Really? She always said those founding relic books never left this room. Selene slowly looked back toward the missing space. Never. Yet one had disappeared yesterday. Before either of them could say another word, a loud crash echoed from somewhere below. Students gasped. Books fluttered nervously through the air. Someone shouted, "The clock gallery!" Selene and Mina exchanged worried looks before running downstairs. The clock gallery stretched across the academy's central hall. Hundreds of enchanted clocks decorated the walls. Each represented an important moment in academy history. Some ticked normally. Others floated. Some ran backward for magical demonstrations. Students gathered around one particular clock, now lying shattered across the floor. Golden gears rolled everywhere. Glass sparkled across the marble tiles. Professor Alder hurried through the crowd. What happened? I don't know. It just exploded. No one touched it. Selene froze. Her eyes locked onto the broken clock. She remembered this. Except, it hadn't happened today. It happened 3 weeks later. The exact morning before. No. Her breathing quickened. Before someone stole the Crown Ledger, the Academy's most valuable historical record, that theft had eventually become her theft. Only, the timeline had changed. Someone else had changed it. Professor Alder carefully lifted one of the broken gears. He looked puzzled. This wasn't an accident. Students whispered nervously. What do you mean? He turned the gear over. Someone had carved a tiny symbol into it. A crescent moon. Selene felt every hair on the back of her neck rise. She knew that symbol. Not because she'd seen it before. Because she'd seen it. On the document accusing her. Stamped into the wax seal. A crescent moon. Exactly the same. As students slowly returned to class, Selene remained staring at the shattered clock. Mina gently nudged her shoulder. You're thinking again. I am. You've got that mystery face. My mystery face. You squint. I do not. You absolutely do. Despite everything. Selene laughed. A real laugh. Small, but real. Mina grinned proudly. There she is. Then her smile faded. Selene. What? Someone's watching us. Selene slowly turned. Far across the gallery, standing beside a stained glass window, a tall white Persian cat, wearing an elegant lavender scarf, watched them silently. Neither student, nor teacher. Just watching. The moment Selene met those pale blue eyes, the stranger smiled, not kindly, knowingly, then disappeared into the crowd. Selene immediately ran after them. Wait! She pushed through students. Turned the corner. Nothing. The hallway was empty. No footsteps. No doors opening. No windows. Gone. Completely gone. Mina caught up moments later. Did you find them? Selene slowly shook her head. No. Do you know who they were? No. She looked down. Something rested on the floor where the stranger had stood. Another ribbon. Soft lavender. Identical to the one tied around the tiny brass bell. Pinned beneath it was a folded note. Selene unfolded it carefully. Only 5 words were written inside. This time, trust no memories. The paper slipped slightly in her trembling paw. Because beneath the message, someone had drawn a tiny bell, exactly like hers. And for the first time since waking into her second chance, Selene wondered whether she was the only one who had remembered tomorrow. Selene read the note again. This time, trust no memories. The words refused to leave her mind. She had spent the entire morning trusting nothing except her memories. Without them, she would have walked straight into the same future. Wouldn't she? Mina carefully looked over her shoulder. That's unsettling. Selene nodded. Very. You think whoever wrote it knows you? I think. She folded the note carefully. They know something they shouldn't. Neither of them noticed the old janitor sweeping nearby. He looked ordinary. An elderly gray cat humming softly while pushing a broom across the marble floor. Students passed him without a second glance. Teachers greeted him politely. No one truly saw him. Except, as Selene walked past, he quietly said, Careful where you ring that bell. She stopped instantly. Very slowly. She turned around. The old cat continued sweeping. As though he hadn't spoken at all. Selene approached him. Excuse me. He smiled without looking up. I wasn't speaking to you. You mentioned a bell. So I did. You've seen it. The old cat finally looked into her eyes. His own were a pale silver, almost reflective. I've seen many bells. Mine. He tilted his head. Does it belong to you? Selene hesitated. I think so. He chuckled. Thinking and knowing are very different things. Mina folded her arms. Sir, if you know something. I know many things. He gently rested both paws on the broom. But knowledge isn't fruit. You can't simply hand it to someone. Selene studied him carefully. Something about him felt ancient. Not old. Ancient. like the library itself had decided to become a cat. You work here. I tidy. For how long? He smiled. Oh, long enough to watch ivy become walls. Mina whispered. I have absolutely no idea what that means. Neither did Selene. Yet somehow, it made perfect sense. The old janitor pointed toward the tiny bell hidden inside Selene's satchel. Don't let anyone hear it. Selene blinked. I haven't rung it. Good. What happens if I do? His smile disappeared. For some, it awakens memories. He paused. For others, it awakens things that were happier remaining asleep. A chill passed through Selene. What things? He simply picked up his broom again. You're asking tomorrow's questions. Then he walked away. Neither Selene nor Mina spoke until the old cat disappeared completely. Finally Mina whispered. That was weird. I was going to say terrifying. I was trying to be polite. The afternoon passed quietly. Almost too quietly. Lectures ended. Students gathered in pastel courtyards beneath flowering cherry trees. Birds circled the floating towers. Everything appeared peaceful. Yet Selene couldn't shake the feeling that someone watched every step she took. Twice she turned around. No one. 3 times she caught movement in distant hallways. Nothing. By sunset, the academy felt less like a school, more like a giant puzzle. That evening Selene returned to her dormitory. The building overlooked a gentle lake glowing beneath floating lanterns. Her room hadn't changed. Books lined one wall. Pressed flowers rested between journal pages. A watercolor painting of Willowmere hung above her desk. Everything looked exactly as she'd left it. Years ago. Or yesterday. Time no longer made sense. She opened the drawer beside her bed. Inside lay dozens of tiny keepsakes. A feather. An old ribbon. A dried lavender flower. A polished pebble Mina insisted was lucky. She smiled. Some things never changed. Then, she froze. Hidden beneath the journal was another object she didn't remember owning. A tiny silver key. No label. No ribbon. Just a key. The moment her paw touched it, another memory struck. A hallway. Running. Someone shouting. Hide the key. Then, darkness again. Selene staggered backward. The vision disappeared as quickly as it arrived. She stared at the key. What are you? A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Selene. Mina. Selene quickly tucked both the key and the bell into her satchel. Come in. Mina entered carrying 2 steaming mugs. I brought chamomile. You read my mind. I know. Mina smiled proudly. I also brought honey biscuits. Now I know you're trying to cheer me up. It appears to be working. They laughed softly. For just a few moments, everything felt normal again. Mina looked around the room. You've been reorganizing. I have. You alphabetized your books. Selene blinked. I did. You always do before something important. I don't remember doing that. Mina laughed. You don't remember half the things you do. That sentence lingered. Selene slowly looked toward her bookshelf. Alphabetized. Perfectly. Exactly the way she always organized them. Yet, she genuinely didn't remember touching them. Later that night, after Mina returned to her own room, Selene sat beside the window. Moonlight painted the academy in pale blues and soft lavender. She removed the bell again, carefully turning it beneath the moonlight. The engraved lily shimmered. Then, she noticed something impossible. There hadn't been writing inside the bell before. Now there was. Tiny glowing words slowly appeared around the rim. When the 3rd bell rings, the sentence stopped. Nothing else. Selene frowned. That's not helpful. She turned it again. More letters slowly emerged. The keeper chooses again. The keeper. She whispered. Who is the keeper? No answer came. Instead, the bell gave the tiniest vibration. Not loud. Barely noticeable. Almost like it had hurt her. Selene immediately wrapped it inside a cloth and tucked it back into her satchel. No ringing. She remembered the janitor's warning. No ringing. The following morning, Willowmere Academy buzzed with excitement. Students crowded around the announcement board. What happened? Someone broke into the East Archive. No way! They didn't steal anything. They searched for something. Selene's heart sank. She pushed through the crowd. A notice had been pinned to the board. Notice to all students. The East Archive will remain closed until further notice following unauthorized entry overnight. No historical records appear to be missing. That's impossible. Selene whispered. If nothing had been stolen, why break in? Unless someone had been searching. Searching for something they couldn't find. Something small. Something portable. Like a bell. Professor Alder approached the gathered students. Everyone, please remain calm. Questions erupted immediately. Were there thieves? Was anyone hurt? What were they after? Professor Alder hesitated. We honestly don't know. Selene noticed Cedric Rowan, standing just behind him. Calm. Collected. Watching the students. Then, for the briefest moment, his eyes met Selene's. And almost imperceptibly, his gaze dropped toward her satchel. Toward the bell. Then returned to her face. He knew. Or at least, he suspected. As students slowly dispersed, A folded paper airplane drifted lazily through the air. No one seemed to notice it. It floated directly toward Selene, landed gently against her shoe. She unfolded it. Only one sentence was written inside. Don't let Cedric hear the bell. No signature. No explanation. Just one tiny drawing beneath the message. A silver broom. Selene looked up instantly. Searching the courtyard, the mysterious janitor was nowhere to be seen. A little pause from Cats and AI. Paw prints. PSSSD. Yes, you. The wonderful human sitting there, probably saying, just one more chapter. For the third time. Our fluffy heroes noticed you've been solving this mystery with them. They think that's pretty impressive. So, if you're enjoying the adventure, don't forget to subscribe to Cats and AI and follow the channel. It tells YouTube that magical cat stories like this deserve more adventures, more kingdoms, more mysteries, and most importantly, more snack breaks for our hardworking feline cast. Besides, if you don't subscribe, Mina might accidentally eat your strawberry cream bun too. She's very sorry. She'll absolutely do it again. Alright, back to the mystery. Cat sparkles. Selene folded the paper carefully. One mystery had become 5. The bell. The silver key. The missing relic book. The stranger with the lavender scarf. And now, a janitor who seemed to know secrets older than the academy itself. Somewhere inside Willowmere. Someone was searching. Someone was warning her. And someone else was already getting closer. The paper airplane trembled slightly in Selene's paw. Don't let Cedric hear the bell. She folded it carefully and tucked it inside her journal. Her first instinct was to hide the bell somewhere. Her second instinct was stronger. If someone is desperately trying to find it, I need to know why. The East Archive remained sealed with enchanted silver vines stretching across its doors. Students whispered as they walked past. Some invented wild stories. Others claimed ancient ghosts had escaped. A group of first years insisted a dragon had hatched beneath the library. Mina smiled. I kind of hope it's the dragon. Selene couldn't help laughing. It would certainly simplify things. You don't think dragons steal books? They usually don't bother returning the overdue ones. Mina gasped dramatically. So dragons really are monsters. Professor Alder approached them, carrying a stack of scrolls. There you two are. His warm smile looked genuine as always. I have a favor. Selene immediately became cautious. What kind of favor? The head archivist needs volunteers. Cedric. He wants help cataloging books that were moved during the investigation. Selene exchanged a glance with Mina. This felt wrong. Almost convenient. Professor Alder noticed their hesitation. You don't have to. Before Selene could answer, Mina spoke. We'll help. Selene looked at her. Mina smiled softly. If something strange is happening, I'd rather we're close enough to see it. An hour later, Cedric welcomed the small group of student volunteers into the temporary archive. He looked exactly as he always had. Elegant, patient, professional. Thank you all for coming. Rows of books covered long wooden tables. Some were wrapped in protective cloth. Others rested inside glass cases. We simply need everything returned to the proper shelves. His voice remained calm. But please, if you discover anything unusual, bring it directly to me. His amber eyes rested on Selene for the briefest moment. Immediately, the work began quietly. Books floated gently between shelves. Students laughed softly while comparing impossible titles. 100 recipes for enchanted turnips. Why fairies should never borrow umbrellas. The extremely unhelpful guide to helpful ghosts. Mina giggled. I kinda want to read all of these. Selene smiled. The ghost one sounds suspicious. Nearly an hour passed. Nothing unusual happened. Then, Selene reached toward an old blue book hidden beneath a stack of atlases. The instant she lifted it, the shelf behind it clicked. She froze. A narrow compartment slowly slid open. Hidden inside was another book. Unlike the others, it had no title. Only a silver bell embossed into its cover. Selene's heartbeat quickened. She carefully removed it. The leather felt strangely warm. Almost alive. Find something interesting. Cedric's voice. Far too close. Selene looked up. He stood only a few feet away. She instinctively closed the book. Oh. She forced a smile. Just an old journal. Cedric studied the cover. For a heartbeat, his expression changed. Not surprise. Recognition. Then his pleasant smile returned. I don't remember that volume. I'll add it to the inventory. No need. His answer came too quickly. I'll handle that one personally. Selene's grip tightened. I'm already holding it. So you are. Silence settled between them. Finally Cedric smiled again. Whenever you're finished. He walked away. Mina hurried over. What was that about? Selene quietly showed her the cover. The bell again. Mina whispered. He definitely recognized it. So did I. What do you mean? This book wasn't hidden. It was hidden. For me. They waited until the volunteer session ended before opening it. Instead of returning to the dormitory, they climbed the oldest tower in Willowmere. Very few students ever visited. Soft clouds drifted below the balcony. The entire kingdom stretched beyond the academy in pastel shades of blue, peach and lavender. It felt wonderfully peaceful. Selene placed the mysterious book between them. No title. No lock. No pages. Mina frowned. She opened the cover. Every page was blank. Completely blank. Well, Mina sighed. That's disappointing. Selene wasn't convinced. She gently rested one paw against the first page. Immediately, silver ink began flowing across the paper. Both cats stared in amazement. Words slowly formed by themselves. Keeper's record. Current guardian. Lady Selene Ashbourne. Mina's mouth fell open. It knows your name. Selene slowly turned the page. More writing appeared. Previous guardian. Unknown. Reason. Memory erased. Another page. Current bell count. Second. Third bell. Pending. What does that mean? Mina whispered. I don't know. Selene carefully turned another page. The next sentence made her blood run cold. If the third bell rings before the false keeper is revealed. The sentence stopped. The remaining ink had faded, as though someone had torn the rest away. A gentle breeze swept across the tower. The pages flipped by themselves. Faster. Faster. Stopping near the middle. This page already contained writing. Old writing. Not magical. Handwritten. Selene recognized the handwriting immediately. Her own. If you're reading this, then I failed. Selene stopped breathing. Mina looked at her. Selene. Her voice barely worked. I wrote this. When? I don't know. She continued reading. Trust Mina. Never let Cedric possess the bell. The keeper isn't a title. It's a choice. And if I disappear again, please forgive me. A tear rolled silently down Selene's cheek. She had written this. Not yesterday. Not today. Somehow. Before everything. Mina gently squeezed her shoulder. You weren't alone. Selene looked at her. What? If you left yourself a message, you must have believed you'd find it. She smiled. And you did. Suddenly, the tiny brass bell inside Selene's satchel vibrated violently. Not once. 3 times. Tick, tick, tick. It wasn't ringing. It was responding. The mysterious book snapped shut on its own. At the exact same moment, every bell across Willowmere Academy began ringing. Not softly, violently. Students screamed below. Teachers rushed into courtyards. Hundreds of enchanted bells echoed through every tower. 1, 2, then silence. Selene slowly looked toward the academy. The great clock tower had stopped moving. Every clock, every watch, every enchanted hourglass, frozen. Time itself seemed to be holding its breath. Then a familiar voice echoed behind them. Quiet, calm, almost amused. I was hoping you would find the book. Selene and Mina turned together. Standing at the tower entrance was the mysterious old janitor. Except, he no longer wore dusty work clothes. Instead, he stood dressed in elegant silver robes embroidered with tiny bells. His broom was gone. In its place rested an ancient silver staff. His gentle smile remained unchanged. I suppose, he said warmly. It's finally time we met properly. The old cat smiled, as though he had been expecting this moment for a very long time. The silver robes shimmered softly beneath the moonlight. Tiny embroidered bells caught the light with every gentle movement. He no longer looked like the academy's quiet janitor. He looked like someone history had forgotten. Mina instinctively stepped in front of Selene. Who are you? The old cat chuckled. I've answered that question many times. His silver eyes twinkled kindly. Most simply forget. Selene slowly lowered the mysterious book. You're the keeper. He bowed his head. I was. Silence settled across the tower. You were. For longer than kingdoms remember. He rested both paws upon his silver staff. And now, someone new has been chosen. His gaze settled gently upon Selene. You. Selene stared at him. I don't understand. I know. You keep saying things as though I'm supposed to. Because, he smiled sadly. Once upon a time you did. A cold breeze swept across the tower. Far below, every clock in Willowmere remained frozen. Students wandered the courtyards in confusion. Teachers tried restarting enchanted clocks. Nothing moved. Not even the shadows. Time itself had paused. Mina looked over the balcony. How is this possible? The old keeper joined her. Time is like a river. You think it only flows forward. It doesn't. It remembers. Selene quietly asked. Is that why I remember dying? He nodded. Not dying. He looked into her eyes. You remembered choosing. Selene frowned. I never chose to die. No. You chose. To save everyone else. The words struck harder than any memory. What? The old keeper gently tapped the mysterious book. The pages reveal only what the guardian is ready to remember. He opened it once more. New silver words appeared. Final memory available. Guardian confirmation required. The old keeper looked at Selene. Are you certain? She hesitated. Every instinct warned her. But another feeling. Hope. I need to know. He nodded once. Then remember. He gently touched the silver staff against the tiny brass bell. Not enough to ring it. Only enough to wake it. The bell glowed. The tower disappeared. Darkness. Smoke. Not panic. Purpose. Selene stood inside the royal archive. Books floated wildly around her. Flames climbed ancient shelves. Students ran toward the exits. Teachers shouted directions. Then, she saw herself. Not as a victim. As a leader. Her past self was directing frightened students through hidden corridors. Take the west stair. Don't stop. Keep moving. Everyone obeyed. Everyone escaped. Everyone. Except her. Another figure entered the burning archive. Cedric. Only, he wasn't trying to help. He was searching. Searching desperately. He ignored the flames. Ignored collapsing shelves. Ignored injured students. He reached a stone pedestal. Empty. No. He whispered. No. He began tearing books from shelves. Looking. Searching. Growing more frantic. What did you do with it? Selene watched in stunned silence. He wasn't chasing me. The keeper quietly answered. No. He was chasing the bell. The vision continued. Selene watched her past self remove the tiny brass bell from beneath her cloak. She smiled through smoke. If you're looking for this. Cedric lunged toward her. She stepped backward. Toward a hidden doorway. Then, she did something that made present-day Selene gasp. She rang the bell. Just once. A single, beautiful note echoed through the burning archive. Everything stopped. Flames froze. Smoke stood motionless. Even falling stones hung suspended in the air. Time had paused. The younger Selene looked directly toward someone. Not Cedric. Someone standing beyond the frozen fire. The old keeper. Only much younger. He bowed respectfully. You've made your decision. She smiled sadly. I have. If I keep the bell, he'll never stop. No. If I destroy it, the memories disappear forever. Yes. She looked toward the terrified students frozen in time. Then back at the keeper. There has to be another way. There is. But it requires a guardian. And the guardian will be forgotten. Present-day Selene whispered. I accepted. The keeper nodded. You gave up every memory connected to the bell. You hid it where only your future self would eventually find it. You erased yourself from its history. And then, you returned time to its proper course. The vision faded. Selene opened her eyes. Tears quietly slipped down her cheeks. I wasn't murdered. The keeper gently shook his head. No. You survived the fire. But no one remembered why you were there. You remembered neither. The bell protected the kingdom. By taking the burden from you. Mina hugged Selene tightly. You saved everyone. Selene laughed softly through tears. I forgot. You were supposed to. A slow clap echoed through the tower. Once. Twice. 3 times. Cedric Rowan stepped from the shadows. Calm. Elegant. Smiling. I always admired your compassion. His voice remained gentle. It makes you wonderfully predictable. Mina immediately stepped between him and Selene. You've been following us. Naturally. His amber eyes settled on the bell. It belongs in responsible pause. The keeper calmly replied. It never belonged to you. Cedric sighed dramatically. You've guarded it for centuries. I merely wish to preserve order. No. The keeper's smile vanished. You wish to control memory. Cedric slowly removed a crystal pendant from beneath his coat. The bell instantly began vibrating. Selene felt it trying to answer. No. She whispered. The keeper raised his silver staff. Don't let it ring. Cedric smiled. You know I only need one note. Without warning. The crystal pendant released a burst of brilliant silver light. The bell leaped from Selene's satchel. Cedric reached for it. So did Selene. Both touched it at exactly the same moment. The bell rang. Not loudly. Softly. Beautifully. One perfect note drifted across Willowmere. Every frozen clock immediately began moving again. The wind returned. Lantern swayed. The academy breathed once more. Far below, students looked around in confusion, unaware that anything extraordinary had just happened. But inside the tower, everything had changed. The mysterious book opened by itself. Its blank pages filled with flowing silver ink. Hundreds of names appeared, generations of guardians, each name glowing warmly before fading into peaceful light. Only one remained. Lady Selene Ashbourne. Beneath it, new words slowly appeared. 3rd bell complete. Keeper chosen. The old keeper smiled. I believe. My retirement is long overdue. His silver robes dissolved into tiny glowing feathers. His ancient staff floated gently toward Selene. She instinctively caught it. The moment her paws touched the polished silver wood, every forgotten memory returned. Not painfully, warmly. She remembered every guardian before her. Every bell. Every promise. Every life. Quietly protected without applause or recognition. She understood at last. The keeper was never a ruler. Never a guardian of power. The keeper protected truth itself. Cedric slowly stepped backward. For the first time, His perfect composure cracked. No, this isn't possible. It chose again. The keeper smiled. It always does. Cedric's crystal pendant shattered into harmless silver dust. Without its magic, every illusion surrounding him faded. The charming smile disappeared. The polished confidence vanished. What remained was not a terrifying villain, only a frightened cat who had spent years chasing something that could never belong to him. He lowered his head. I only wanted to rewrite history, Selene answered quietly. History isn't meant to belong to one person. It belongs to everyone who lived it. The academy never learned the whole truth. Students remembered strange bells. Teachers remembered clocks stopping. Some insisted it had all been a magical malfunction. Others blamed ancient enchantments. Life slowly returned to normal, exactly as life always does. Professor Alder continued teaching with kindness. Mina still brought far too many strawberry cream buns. The enchanted portraits continued offering advice nobody asked for. And every morning, a small silver bell rested quietly on the highest tower, never ringing, simply waiting. Months later, graduation arrived beneath skies painted in soft pink and gold. As students tossed pastel ribbons into the air, Mina smiled at Selene. So, you going to tell me what keepers actually do? Selene laughed. If I told you, I'd have to make you organize every library in the kingdom. Mina gasped. You monster. I know. They both laughed until tears filled their eyes. Long after the celebration ended, a nervous first-year student quietly approached Selene. Lady Selene. Yes. I found something strange in the library. Selene smiled warmly. Then let's go look together. She followed the young student through the glowing halls of Willowmere. Not because destiny demanded it, not because history required it, but because someone curious had asked for help. And sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness protected the greatest stories. Above the tallest tower, the little silver bell shimmered gently in the evening breeze. It remained silent, for now, because somewhere, someday, another story would begin.